Well, Kelly, leadership now from both the House and the Senate are backing this effort to ban lawmakers from trading stocks while they are in office. Recent polling shows that about 76% of voters support this idea, and both Republicans and Democrats have proposed bills that would crack down on what they say is a conflict of interest. Now, currently, lawmakers are only barred from insider trading. They can still buy and sell individual stocks as long as they disclose it. But Representative Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, is part of a growing chorus of lawmakers who want to strengthen the rules and beef up enforcement. He joins us now. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Great to be with you today.
So, Congressman, let's start with this, because you were a businessman before you came to Washington. You understand the markets, you understand investing, you've benefited from all of that. So why shouldn't other lawmakers do the same?
Well, any American should be able to benefit from a rising market. I want to see everybody do well, of course, but those who hold elected office have a duty to those who elected them to do so in good faith. And the truth is, there are occasions, in my estimation, that members of Congress obtain information that may not be insider information, but they obtain it before the general public. And it is simply the fact that Americans have lost faith in the ethics of Congress. And I hear from too many people their concerns about how members of Congress conduct themselves financially and otherwise. And in my effort and mission to restore faith in our government, I think it's important that we uphold a higher standard, both ethically and as fiduciaries.
So you are a co-sponsor of this bipartisan bill, the Trust in Congress Act, that would require lawmakers to put their assets in a blind trust. Tell us why you think that's the right approach.
So there are a lot of propositions in Congress right now, of course, but I think this is the gold standard. I think Representative Spanberger and Chip Roy have worked thoughtfully on this, and I believe that a blind trust is the least limiting, but frankly, the most expeditious and reasonable path forward. It does not require those who serve in Congress to dispose of their assets, incur a massive tax burden, if you will. Rather, sets aside those tradable assets in a blind trust and creates a layer, if you will, of protection between the information that members of Congress discover in their jobs and then trading on it. It's what I have done proactively, despite the fact that it is not a requirement, and I think everybody should do so.
Congressman, it's Kelly here, and thanks again for joining us. One of the other bills would go further than yours and require people to sell their holdings if they were elected to Congress. I think it's the one co-sponsored by Warren. Would you support that bill, or do you think that's too punitive?
I think it's too punitive, and frankly, Kelly, I want to see the best and brightest of America serve in Congress. That means people of all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of success stories, and all kinds of socioeconomics. I don't want to preclude people who've been successful from serving in Congress and making such an act as selling all your assets or tradable assets. I think is quite punitive. So to me, this is not an issue about whether one owns stock. It's whether or not you use the information that you obtain as a member of Congress to trade it. And that is the issue. I think a blind trust is a wonderful solution. I'm trying to inspire my colleagues to get behind it, because we don't want to make the burdens of serving so high that we, frankly, limit who's willing to do it.
As you may or may not know, we here at CNBC operate under very similar rules. If you want to own individual securities, you do have to put them in a blind trust. Otherwise, mutual funds are okay and ETFs are okay. But my question for you is this, Congressman. If insider trading is already and always illegal, in other words, profiting from knowledge that is not publicly available, what does this law aim to curb if it isn't that? In other words, shouldn't the existing insider trading laws be sufficient to stop what you want to stop?
The truth is that we've got a lot of laws on the books that unfortunately are not always upheld and not always enforced. We already have the Stock Act in Congress. There have been upwards of 50 violations of it, I think, just in the past few years. And the enforcement of some of these regulations are simply not working. So I do think this is a way to satisfy that challenge, if you will, because the fact of the matter, even though we have transparency right now, and we do, any voter can look at the transactions, the PTRs, periodic transaction reports of any member of Congress. We have to report trades. It is transparent, but it's also become quite politicized. And I do believe it's in the best interest to restore faith to do it this way. It's not that difficult. It should be a standard. And by the way, not just for members of Congress. This should be for the federal branch and also the judiciary. As Speaker Pelosi mentioned today, our judicial branch is not held to the same standards. And I believe it's time that we raise the ethical bar for those in Congress.
Would you put your staffers under the same strictures? Your staff?
I don't believe that staff members who right now are woefully undercompensated and overworked should be subject to those same regulations. I think this should be those who hold elected office. Anybody who trades on insider information, as you just noted in the United States, is subject to punishment. I think we should set a different standard, a higher one, if you will, for members of Congress.
Congressman, you mentioned the types of punishment that might be applied if someone doesn't follow the rules. A range of penalties have been suggested, from forfeiture of profits to forfeiture of salary to potential jail time. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
I think if a member of Congress is found to have used insider information not available to the general public, to enrich him or herself, that member should be expelled from Congress and punished according to law. I serve on the Ethics Committee in Congress. I am on a mission to raise that bar for Democrats and Republicans because Americans are concerned about the ethics of those who represent them, and we have to start paying more attention to it. And I'm saddened that it took this long to get to this point where we're discussing it, and my hope and expectation is we will get something done.
And what has your conversations with Speaker Pelosi been like? Do you feel like she's committed to moving this forward?
I've asked for some time with the Speaker, either later today or tomorrow. I plan to once again register my perspective. I surely have made public statements to that end. When she made remarks not long ago that she did not support a ban on trading, I took exception to it, as many of my colleagues did, including many Democrats. And that's why we find ourselves in this position today. And I think we will get something done, and I'm going to register that perspective again in the next 24 hours.
Congressman Phillips, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Indeed.